I've always loved the idea of isolation. That's why 3 years ago, I bought an old farmhouse deep in the countryside. No neighbors for miles, just endless fields, thick patches of woods, and a long, winding dirt road that leads to the nearest town. It was exactly what I wanted: peace, quiet, and no one bothering me. The house was old, sure, but it had character. Wooden floors that creaked with every step, faded wallpaper peeling in the corners, and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. Some people might call it creepy, but to me, it was perfect. Every morning, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, listening to the wind blow through the tall grass. Every night, I'd fall asleep to the sound of crickets and the occasional owl hooting in the trees. But lately, things have changed. It started about a month ago. At first, it was subtle. I'd hear the floorboards creak late at night, louder, heavier than usual, almost like footsteps. But I brushed it off. Old houses make noise, I told myself. Nothing unusual about that. Then, one night, I was sitting in the living room reading when I heard a knock. A single, deliberate knock at the front door. My stomach twisted. No one ever came out here. No one. I stood up slowly, heart pounding in my ears, and approached the door. I called out, "Hello," but there was no answer. Just the night air pressing against the door. I turned on the porch light and opened the door a crack. Nothing. The porch was empty. The fields beyond were dark and endless. I stepped out, scanning the yard, but saw no one. No tracks, no cars, nothing but the whisper of the wind. I shook it off and went back inside, locking the door behind me. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The next night, it happened again. This time, it wasn't a knock. It was a scraping sound, like fingernails dragging slowly down the wooden panels of the house. I froze, listening. It circled the house, moving from one wall to the next. I could hear it so clearly. It was like whatever it was, it wanted me to know it was there. I stayed up the rest of the night, sitting on the couch with the lights on, a heavy flashlight clutched in my hand. But nothing else happened. The days that followed were worse. I'd find things moved inside the house. A chair knocked over. A picture frame tilted face down. At first, I thought maybe I had done it and forgotten. But deep down, I knew better. I lived alone. No one else had a key. And every night, always around the same time, the noises returned, scratching, tapping, faint footsteps along the hallway. One evening, just as the sun was setting, I was upstairs in my bedroom when I heard the attic door creak open. My blood ran cold. I hadn't been up there in months. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly climbed the narrow staircase. Every step groaned under my weight. When I reached the attic, the door was swinging gently, back and forth. I pushed it open and swept my flashlight across the room. It was empty. Dust floated in the beam of light, old boxes stacked in the corners, an old trunk half buried under a sheet. But just as I was about to leave, I caught a glimpse of something near the window, a handprint. A small, dusty handprint, smudged against the glass from the inside. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and slammed the attic door shut. I locked it and pushed a heavy dresser in front of it for good measure. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed. I even installed motion lights around the property. I thought maybe that would be enough to scare off whatever or whoever was messing with me. But it wasn't. A week later, the lights started flickering. First inside the house, then outside on the porch. They'd flicker, buzz, and then go out completely, plunging me into darkness. I bought a generator, but somehow even that would fail, just when I needed it most. One night, after another power outage, I sat in my living room with a lantern, listening. The house felt different, like it was holding its breath. And then I heard it. The faint sound of whispering. Not outside, inside. It was so soft, so close, like someone whispering just behind my ear. I spun around, shining my light, but there was no one there. The whispers continued, slipping through the walls, seeping into my bones. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. They were inside my head. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided I had to leave. I packed a bag that night, planning to head to a motel in town. Just one night away to clear my head. Maybe figure things out. But when I opened the front door to leave, I froze. There, standing at the edge of the porch, was a figure. Tall, thin, cloaked in shadows. I couldn't make out a face, but I could feel it watching me, studying me. I slammed the door and locked it. Heart racing, mind spinning. I ran to the back door. The figure was there too. And in the window by the kitchen, and by the stairs. They were everywhere. Trapped, I bolted upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom. I called the police, voice trembling, and begged them to send someone, anyone. They promised a unit was on the way, but the nearest station was almost 40 minutes out. As I waited, sitting on the cold tile floor, I heard the floorboards creak downstairs. Then the stairs, slow, deliberate footsteps making their way up toward me. I held my breath. I had nowhere left to run. The doorknob rattled once, then twice, then silence. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like hours until I finally heard sirens in the distance. When the police arrived, they found no sign of anyone. No footprints, no broken windows, nothing. Like no one had ever been there at all. I left that night and never went back. The farmhouse still sits there, abandoned, swallowed slowly by the tall grass and the creeping woods. Sometimes, I wonder if whoever or whatever I saw is still there, waiting for the next person who thinks they want to live alone in the quiet. Because the thing about isolation is, you're never truly alone. Not out there. Not in that house. Not ever. When I was 23, I moved back home after college to save up some money before getting my own place. My parents had a finished basement with its own entrance, and they let me stay there rent-free as long as I helped out around the house. Honestly, It was perfect. Private enough that I still felt independent, but close enough that I didn't feel completely on my own. The basement was cozy. A living room area, small kitchenette, bedroom, and bathroom. The main door led to a stairwell that connected to the upstairs kitchen, but I usually kept it locked from my side. I also had my own door to the backyard. One weekend, my parents left to visit my aunt a few towns over, planning to stay the night. That meant I had the house all to myself. I invited a couple of friends over, Ryan and Chris, just to chill, play video games, have a few drinks, nothing crazy. We hung out until pretty late, just laughing, playing some old school games and eating junk food. Around 2 a.m., Ryan decided he was too tired to drive home, so he crashed on the couch. Chris lived only a few minutes away, so he headed out. Before going to bed, I did my usual routine, locked the side door, double-checked the stairwell door was bolted, and then passed out hard. At some point during the night, I woke up to a faint noise. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. It was this light tapping sound, like something brushing against wood. I sat up, blinking, trying to figure out what it was. Then I heard it again, this time more clearly, a slow, deliberate tapping right against my bedroom door. At first, I thought maybe Ryan got confused looking for the bathroom. I called out quietly, "Yo, dude, wrong door!" But there was no answer. The tapping stopped. A little creeped out, but way too tired to care, I flopped back onto my bed and eventually drifted off. The next morning, Ryan was already gone when I woke up. I shot him a text asking if he knocked on my door during the night. He replied almost immediately, saying he never even got up once. He'd passed out on the couch and slept straight through. I laughed it off, chalking it up to maybe just the house making noises, or me half dreaming it. That night, I stayed in again. I watched a movie, grabbed a late snack, locked up, and got ready for bed. Just as I was about to shut my eyes, I heard something again. This time, it wasn't tapping, it was creaking. Like slow, cautious footsteps, right above my ceiling, the upstairs kitchen. My first thought was that my parents had come home early. But when I checked my phone, there were no texts or missed calls. Besides, it was nearly 3 a.m. I held my breath and listened carefully. The footsteps moved from the kitchen, across the floor, stopping somewhere above the stairwell. I sat up in bed, adrenaline spiking. Every instinct in my body told me something was wrong. I grabbed the small baseball bat I kept next to my bed, a leftover habit from living off campus, and tiptoed to my bedroom door. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. I didn't know what to do. Call my parents? Call the cops? Tell myself I was being paranoid? That's when the door handle to the stairwell connecting to upstairs clicked. I froze. It was locked. I was sure it was locked, but someone was testing it from the other side. I backed away, heart racing, and quietly texted my parents, just in case. No response. I texted Ryan. Nothing. I waited, barely breathing, gripping the bat tighter. Minutes dragged by. Finally, I forced myself to slowly crack open my bedroom door and peek into the basement living room. Everything seemed normal, but the stairwell door had a shadow underneath it. The faintest, shifting darkness, like someone standing right on the other side. I retreated back into my room and locked the door. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. I whispered into the phone, telling the operator what was happening. She kept me calm, said officers were already on their way, and told me to stay hidden. I waited. Every creak of the house made my blood turn to ice. I thought I heard something moving upstairs again, but I couldn't be sure if it was real or just my mind playing tricks. Finally, there was a knock on my bedroom window. I peeked through the blinds and saw a police officer outside. I opened the window enough to hand him the key to the backyard door. A few minutes later, I heard them sweep through the house boots, pounding the floor above me. Then a voice called out, telling me it was safe to come out. I met them upstairs, my legs barely supporting me. 2 officers were standing by the kitchen, and one was pointing to the pantry door. It was cracked open just a hair. They pulled it fully open and revealed a man crouched inside, dirty, wild-eyed, and clutching a kitchen knife to his chest. He didn't say a word as they dragged him out in handcuffs. He just stared at me with this blank, hollow look, like he wasn't even really there. Apparently, the back door upstairs had been left unlocked. He must have slipped in sometime that evening while I was downstairs, completely unaware. The scariest part is that the police said based on how cold he was and how dirty his clothes were, he had probably been hiding in the house for hours before he ever made a sound. If I hadn't locked the stairwell door, if I hadn't heard that tapping the night before, who knows what would have happened. I moved out of my parents' place 2 weeks later. Some nights, even now, I still wake up and swear I hear footsteps in the ceiling. When I was 16, my parents left me home alone for the weekend while they went out of town for a wedding. It wasn't the first time they trusted me to stay by myself, and honestly, I was excited. 2 days of eating junk food, watching horror movies, and sleeping whenever I wanted. The only company I had was our golden retriever, Max, who was way too friendly to be any kind of real guard dog, but he made me feel safer just having him around. That Friday night, it was raining hard. The kind of rain that made everything outside look blurry, and made every little creak inside the house sound louder than usual. I curled up on the couch with Max, flipping through movies on Netflix, not really paying attention. Around 11 p.m., Max suddenly sat up, ears perked, staring toward the front door. At first, I thought he heard thunder, or maybe the neighbors pulling into their driveway. I muted the TV and listened, but all I could hear was the rain hammering against the windows. Max kept growling low in his throat, his eyes locked on the door. I got up and peeked through the peephole, but the porch light was off and I couldn't see anything. I told Max to relax and went back to the couch, turning the volume down a little just in case. About 20 minutes later, I heard it. 3 soft knocks on the front door. Not loud, not hurried, just deliberate. Max started barking like crazy, throwing himself at the door. My heart jumped into my throat. I tiptoed back to the peephole, my hands shaking a little. There was nobody there. I stood frozen for a second, half convinced my mind was playing tricks on me, until I heard it again, this time from the back door. 3 knocks. Slow. Steady. Mox was running between doors now, barking himself hoarsely. I grabbed my phone and texted my parents, but I knew they wouldn't see it right away. They were probably still at the wedding reception, hours away from checking their phones. I considered calling the police, But what was I going to say? That someone knocked and left? I didn't even see anyone. I turned off all the lights and grabbed a kitchen knife, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the rain anymore. I herded Max into my bedroom and locked the door behind us. I sat on the bed, trying to calm him down, when suddenly I heard the gate creak open, the side gate that led to the backyard. I lived in a safe neighborhood. We barely even locked our doors growing up. But right then, I wished we had a deadbolt, a chain lock, anything more than a flimsy doorknob between me and whatever was creeping around outside. I crept to the window and pulled the curtain back, just a fraction. I couldn't see much. The rain was coming down in sheets now, but I could make out a shadow moving through the backyard. A tall figure, wearing a hood or maybe just soaking wet, walking slowly along the fence line. Max was growling so deep it didn't even sound like him anymore. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed. It suddenly felt very, very small. Then the doorknob to the back door started to rattle. Someone was trying to get inside. I bolted upright and immediately dialed 911 with shaking fingers. As the operator answered, I heard the unmistakable sound of the door creaking open downstairs. "I think someone's inside my house," I whispered into the phone. The operator told me to stay hidden and stay on the line. Officers were on their way. I pressed myself into the corner of my room with Max in front of me, listening as the heavy footsteps creaked across the floor below. The house was old. Every board, every step had a voice of its own. I could track the intruder just by listening. They moved from the kitchen into the living room, then the hallway. Closer, closer. And then they stopped. Right outside my bedroom door. I didn't breathe. Max didn't make a sound. For a second, I thought maybe they were listening too, trying to hear if anyone was inside. The doorknob jiggled lightly. Once. Twice. Then nothing. The silence dragged on for what felt like forever. I could hear the rain, the ticking of the clock on my nightstand. The blood rushing in my ears. I gripped the bat so hard my hands ached. Then suddenly pounding footsteps. Not toward me, but away. Down the stairs. The back door slammed open again. The operator told me the police had just pulled up. I ran to the window and saw the blue and red lights flashing outside. 2 officers sprinting up the walkway. I met them at the door. Max still barking like mad behind me. They searched the house, top to bottom, but the intruder was gone. All they found were muddy footprints leading from the backyard through the kitchen and into the hallway. They stayed with me until my parents finally got home 2 hours later. I was shaken, but grateful nothing worse had happened. The weirdest part? The next morning we found something strange by the back door, a small waterlogged box. Inside was a wrapped gift and a card. The card said, Thought you'd like this. Sorry I missed you, Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank was my dad's half-brother. I barely knew him. I'd maybe seen him at a handful of family gatherings over the years. He lived across the state. There was no good reason for him to be at our house, unannounced, in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm. Especially not sneaking through the backyard. My parents immediately called him. He swore up and down that he just wanted to surprise me with a birthday gift, since he couldn't make it to the party the following weekend. That he thought it would be funny to scare me a little, then surprise me with a present. Nobody bought that excuse. Not my parents. Not me. We cut contact with Uncle Frank after that. I haven't seen him in years. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about how close he was to getting inside my room. How different that night could have turned out if Max hadn't been there. And worst of all, how long he might have been watching the house before he even knocked.